It's Monday night here on the West Coast. The Sweet 16 has happened. My bracket is still perfect, Tate. I'm looking at it right now. One of my tricks I pulled here was I waited till after the games were played to fill it in. So it's perfect. You get it?
I get it.
Yeah.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So that made me laugh. If you're watching video, yeah.
I'm holding it up right now. I could take a picture of it and then just be like, wow.
Look at that. Look
how
what I'm doing.
I did. Which Lane Kiffin did on Twitter. I saw him do that. After, by the way, UMBC wins, and they took a picture, and he's like, I totally called this, but it was like handwritten.
It's also, this is the time when everyone brags about their brackets, especially this year when there's all these major upsets. It's, my stepson made this bracket, and look how great he was. He got 7 of the 8. Right, good for him. Congratulations. And then people are like, "What a genius! Yeah. Put that guy on television." It's great.
Or you do the
fun time.
You just take like you zoom in on just one part of the bracket.
Yes, that you're doing well in.
You're like, wow, look at the top half of the South. I totally called UMBC and it's like, can we see the rest of the bracket? Or are you just gonna
Can you zoom out?
So the Sweet 16 is set. We've had you and I we've been doing podcasts pretty much throughout this entire tournament. I feel like I've been sitting in this exact chair looking at your face for, 3 straight weeks at this point?
Too much. You hate me at this point. You're ready to go. You're out.
So you and I have had about, 12 hours now to digest, what the Sweet 16 looks like?
That's the whole point of the start of this podcast. I was telling you before we got on the air, I just want to put it out there that, we reacted as soon as the game's in. It's not a joke. It's not like, we're actually sitting down and talking about any of this. We're watching it all. We're in this haze of eating snacks, of drinking terrible drinks, of not being healthy.
Don't complain. Our friends of the program hate it when we complain about our lives, but yeah.
And we're just in this haze, and then we just sit down in these chairs, put a microphone in front of us, and it's sort of just rapid fire, whatever comes off the top of our heads. There's nothing else to it, folks. I know that's amazing, but we're sitting here now. It's marinated a little bit. You got to let things marinate. Mm-hmm. And I have some thoughts. First off, I didn't see what Kenny did to Charles when it went to halftime of the Clemson-Auburn game. So for people that didn't see this, it was 19 points that Auburn had. They were getting blown out by Clemson. It was 43-19. And Charles Barkley, for whatever it's worth, when Chris Jenkins hit that shot, he jumped up in the air. He celebrated in Kenny's face and just laughed at him. It was one of the meanest things I've ever seen. But also, it's Chuck, and it was hilarious. If it didn't happen personally to me, it would be hilarious. But Kenny finally got his chance to get back at Chuck. Auburn is down 43-19. He pulls out his pencil, and now Charles has all these stupid orange and blue balloons behind him, and Kenny gets a pencil and starts popping all the balloons as Charles tries to talk about Xavier, Florida State. He's like, and I can't believe this one city went down in Xavier. And Kenny's just popping all the balloons. And see, we miss talking about that, and it makes me sad. So this is just cleanup duty. I missed that moment.
It's like you and I. We're gonna get to that level eventually.
Yeah.
When
I'm popping balloons behind you while you try to make points as I cackle. It'll be great. Just happy for Kenny.
We made the mistake. Yeah, like you said, we do our recap pods instantly. We did not learn from what I learned with my article.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
You take some time and you wait.
You use your smart ways on the writing side.
Here's what we're doing now is we're taking some time while we're waiting. And in waiting, Tate, what I have found is America has turned on Tom Izzo. I feel like this is the story coming out of the second round. Certainly, I think a lot of people like to just look forward with these things, and we're going to look forward. And we're going to talk about the games that come. I want to look back on the damage that was left behind, and the damage is that Michigan State fans. It's not even the rest of the country. I mean, Michigan fans after the Big Ten tournament are on it's John Beeline's. Yeah,
yeah. We talked about this before the tournament. It's basically right now we're trying to figure out the Michigan man that is the man of March.
Right. And Michigan fans are already there. They've already arrived at like Izzo's a fraud. He's no longer Mr. March. Beeline is Mr. March. But now I feel like Michigan State fans are in agreement with this. I was like stunned at the reactions to this, and I don't know how much of this had to do with the Nassar stuff going on, all the like what who knows what with all of that with
it sharpens the stake, right?
Yeah. So I don't know like if that's the reaction where like Michigan State fans are like, Izzo this is the 3rd straight year he's not made the Sweet 16, and then on top of kind of the question marks surrounding how he handled certain things, now we want him to go, or if like this reaction is just based off of him not making the Sweet 16 in the last 3 years. But I was stunned by this because, first of all, you're taking away one of my favorite ongoing things, which is shitting on Tom Izzo, because like for the longest time, Tom Izzo was like the most lovable guy in the world, and I just like to be a contrarian, and I just like to point, that's what a few years ago I made up the thing about how he had the conspiracy with Denzel Valentine.
Well, I called Tom Izzo the compromise always because everyone was trying to find the coach, like, it's Coach K, but people were like, we don't like Coach K. Well, what about Roy? Well, he got to go coach at Kansas and Carolina. How hard is that? And, like, Izzo was the one we all decided was, Tom Izzo, he's the guy. He's the front man for this.
And because of that, I love to just be a troll, basically. Like, I've always loved Tom Izzo and thought he was great. I've always bought into all that.
You're like, but what about Thad Matta, though?
But I just like to stir the pot. I'm like, but are we sure Tom Izzo? Or are we sure? He's only won one title.
Yeah.
And then now that everyone's like joining that side, it's no longer fun. I'm coming back to the other side. Like, we're doing what we did with Trae Young. Whatever America thinks, I'm thinking the opposite. But it's shocking how everyone has turned on Tom Izzo. And I say that, but I also acknowledge this was an all-time horrendous coaching job with this Michigan State team. There's no other way around it. This is not an overreaction to one game against Syracuse. That I think if you're just kind of tuning in to college basketball and you're just kind of watch the tournament and you see people ripping apart Izzo, you're like, it's just one game, like it was the ball bounces a different way. Maybe Michigan State's moving on. Why do people hate Izzo so much?
The classic, if we made shots.
Yeah, if we made shots. Well, the answer is, as you and I pointed out, immediately in the Champions Classic when Michigan State lost to Duke, when Duke didn't even have Marvin Bagley for most of the game, Izzo basically screwed this team up the entire year, playing guys out of position. He has way too many big guys. If Michigan State was an NBA team, they would have packaged like 4 or 5 of those big guys for a point guard. I thought Cassius Winston's a great point guard. I always wanted them to have like a guy who just ran the offense.
Imagine if they could have traded Nick Ward for Tony Carr.
Yes. Yes. Or just like Nick Ward, Ben Carter, Xavier Tillman, Kenny Goings. Like, trade them all.
We have Jaren Jackson. Let's just keep him out there. Somehow he only
guys.
played 15 minutes in the game, but that's where the problem lies.
Jaren Jackson plays 15 minutes. So anyway, this was the problem all year. I mean, you have Miles Bridges, you have Jaren Jackson. Those two guys basically against 98% of probably 99.9% of the teams in college basketball. Every time Michigan State takes the floor, they have 2 players better than any the other team's best player. That's true for like most every game. And the problem is both of those 2 players are playing out of position. And it's obvious to anybody. You don't have to be, you don't have to be as smart as Tate and I at this time to notice this, that Miles Bridges, maybe he plays the 3 at the next level. I don't really care. I'm not an NBA guy. That doesn't concern me. At the college level, the man is a 4. He's an obvious 4 that can stretch, have him pick and pop, have him stretch the floor if he wants to, have him shoot the 3s. I'm fine with it.
But therein lies the problem with the whole thing and this whole situation. When Bridges came back, when Miles Bridges decided to come back, we knew he was a top 10 pick last year. He's not going to be a one and done. Everyone's celebrating. We're already saying, okay, this is Tom Izzo's team. We got the Flint guy. He's a 5-star. He loves Michigan State basketball so much he's willing to sacrifice to come back, which is great. That's the great storyline. That's what Tom Izzo talked about after the game. He's like, I'm sad because of what Miles sacrificed for this team.
Right.
And what Izzo didn't do was sacrifice for this team.
Right.
And with Miles Bridges. And you know what he had to do? He had to sacrifice a little bit of that relationship, that kinship he had with Miles Bridges and say, hey, Miles, I understand you're trying to be a 3 in the NBA. I understand that's where we're trying to get to. But the sacrifice you made was to come back and play college basketball.
Right.
And guess what position you play in college basketball? The 4. You're going to help this team play in the 4. And Miles, I think, honestly would have bought into that a little bit. But I think Izzo was still sticking to we got to bring Miles back, but we also got to protect his stock. Right. Which is the problem and the predicament with this whole situation with the one and dones.
Mike Valenti, the guy I go to, when shit hits a fan with Michigan State, I go to Mike Valenti.
Unbelievable rant.
Radio guy in Detroit. He's a Spartan. He says, this is my favorite part, is he goes, in big games against big coaches, this dude is a 0. He's talking about Izzo.
Tom Izzo.
That's just the facts.
Facts.
Valenti, yeah.
He did it. Facts.
Facts. Yeah, he's great for that. And then Max Kellerman's coming out saying Michigan State deserves the death penalty for the Nassar stuff. Izzo, he should leave immediately. People are talking about, like, is he just going to voluntarily leave? Izzo says, I don't think I'm really going anywhere. Again, like all the Nassar stuff aside, like obviously that has an impact on how people are talking about Izzo's job status. Yeah, and anyway he sliced it, I mean, he was trying to pretend like this season wasn't. I mean, for Michigan State fans, as we've said 100 times by now, this was
a colossal
failure of a season. There's no other way. They won the Big Ten, and I think as an outsider, you look at that and you're like, well, at least they won the Big Ten regular season. That matters. if you actually like pay attention to how they won the Big Ten, they lost the only game they played Ohio State. There were 4 teams that made the NCAA tournament from the Big Ten.
Yep.
One was Michigan State. So that means they played 3 NCAA tournament teams in that conference. They played Ohio State once at Ohio State, got their asses handed to them.
Mm-hmm.
They played Michigan at home, got their asses handed to them. They played Michigan again in the Big Ten tournament, got their asses handed to them. And they played Purdue at home and won barely.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. That was like what they had to show for it. If they're playing a balanced schedule, if they're playing those teams twice, that looks very different. I'm not even saying that because I'm an Ohio State guy and I felt like maybe Ohio State makes it. Like, that's true of all the other teams. Very easily Purdue – like I don't think you can look at the stand or how the Big Ten shaked out this year and say Michigan State was definitely the best team in the conference.
But that's a minor argument anyway, because the whole this season wasn't to win the Big Ten regular season.
Yeah.
Like if you're using that as a cop out to say this isn't a failure, like Tom Izzo will go into a room right now, and if he was being 100% honest, he's going to say this was a failure. They thought they were going to win a title. That was the whole point. I mean, and they were built to win a title. They had the team to win a title. You expected them to compete for a title. That's why it was I've seen all the coverage, since this whole thing has played out. No one's really talked about Xavier that much. North Carolina, they've talked about that because they're the defending champs. Tom Izzo and this team, Miles Bridges and this team, Jaren Jackson, this team, this was a special group that looked like they were destined for something special. Yeah. We got robbed of something.
You put them on paper, it's like shot. Like you watch these guys warm up, and they got like the video on Miles Bridges, and they're like 5 minutes till tip, and you're showing Miles Bridges, and I've watched Michigan State all year, so I'm not like surprised to see who they have, but. I just imagine like someone watching this and being like, "Oh yeah, Miles Bridges, he's really good." And then they cut the camera and they're showing like Josh Langford, and they're like, "Oh, he's still there. Oh yeah, he's good." And they cut to Jaren Jackson, like, "Oh shit, they got Jaren Jackson. That's right." And then Cassius Winston, you're like, "Oh my god, this team is stacked."
And then it's Matt McQuaid, and you're like, "Okay, well maybe they have."
And then they show Ben Carter like sitting on the bench, and they show a graphic. This man will play 23 minutes, and they're like,
okay. Well, we messed
that makes a ton of sense. So, Izzo has the point has arrived that, I mean, Michigan State.
This is the tipping point for Tom Izzo. Yes,
it kind of is.
And we're gonna see where he shakes out.
It's unbelievable.
And look, let's be honest. Like Roy Williams was at this point in 2014. He was in the midst of all the stuff around the program, because the cloud that surrounds a program. It bears so much weight, and sometimes you just can't get without with these NCAA investigators like Rick Pitino, he couldn't get out from the cloud, and he was done.
He was done, or is he?
Or is
he done?
Or is he going?
Is he? We'll see.
What if he went to Xavier? That'd be awesome. Just kidding, Xavier.
Michigan State wins nothing this year. You get nothing, and you like it. They won the Big Ten regular season with an unbalanced schedule. They don't even make the Big Ten championship in the tournament. They don't even make the Sweet 16. That's it. The other team in that game, Syracuse, and I have this question for you because you're the ACC expert on this podcast, so I'm going to throw this one at you. That game, Michigan State-Syracuse, was no other way around it, like just ugly basketball. And the outcome from that game is Syracuse now Jim Boeheim, this is his second trip to the Sweet 16 in the last 3 years, with both of them with double-digit seeds. So obviously improbable runs of the Sweet 16. Both of them took the same approach of like, we're just going to make the game as ugly as possible, just try to steal it at the end, and that's kind of how we're going to go about this. And it sort of felt like, and I know this is probably fits under the description of a straw man argument, and I'm not saying everybody feels this way. It's just I get on the internet, I absorb what I absorb, I see what I see, and based on what I can see and gather, people sort of applaud Boeheim for what he's been able to do with this team, and as they should. I mean, obviously, you take an 11 seed, you take a bubble team to 3-16, that's great. That's amazing. My question to you, Tate, is why when Virginia loses for playing ugly and boring and everyone's like trying to gouge their eyes out and saying this is awful, it's Tony Bennett gets raked over the coals, but when Boeheim makes games ugly and steals them in the end, they clap? And is the answer just because every person in the media went to Syracuse?
That is a great answer. That would actually be we should check that out. Every single person that writes a good thing about Boeheim, we'll see where they went to school. I will say this about Jim Boeheim. He's 73 years old.
That's old.
He is the second in Division I in wins, right behind Coach K, so he's number 2. He's really like, if I always view Coach K as Dr. Evil, and I always vision Jim Boeheim as number 2. And I think that's sort of how they roll. They kind of roll together. Jim Boeheim kind of realized he wasn't going to be the greatest, so he was like, I'll just tag team with Coach K because then I'm at least in the conversation at all times. And the best thing I could say about the Jim Boeheim zone is that it works.
Yes.
You know, I don't agree with it. I don't like it. I've never liked it. I've been watching Jim Boeheim run zone since he did it at Kansas in 2003, you know, with Carmelo, and that was probably the best iteration of it because at least Carmelo can score better than anyone we've ever seen in college basketball pretty much. This team, if you would have told me that 4 ACC teams got to the Sweet 16 before this tournament blindly, and I were to go through and guess, I would have gotten to the 12th or 13th team before I said.
You got to Pittsburgh.
I would have been like, I think Stallings made a run. Did they let him play in the play-in game? I cannot believe this team put it together, but I think that's on Howard for playing better. I think Battles, you know, competing, playing better. I mean, they just play harder in the tournament for whatever reason, and I think it's so unassuming to play an 11 seed, and you kind of have your guard down. If Syracuse is number 4 seed, you're like, I'm worried about this team. They got some athletes. Like when CJ Fair was there, you know, it's like, I'm worried about this team, and then they just wouldn't show up. But when they're the 11 seed, they're just kind of like, we're just balls to the wall, and we'll see what happens.
Isn't that funny how, like, this basically the Syracuse-Michigan State game, even though Izzo has sucked against Boeheim historically, just the two, for the longest time, I mean, Tom Izzo is known, again, as the Wizard of March, and he always overachieves in March. Boeheim is one of the most notorious chokers to people. I don't necessarily subscribe to that, but like,
pretty much the belief about Boeheim is like, if he didn't get Melo to come, he's nothing.
Yeah. That's kind of the MO on Boeheim.
Yeah.
And in this game, what comes out of it is like, my God, Jim Boeheim. He's just, you know, he's taking these teams. He's just, that man has nothing, and he's just making something out of nothing. And Izzo is the guy who's like just chokes now. And it's, I guess the point is like, just throw away every narrative that you've ever come up with about these coaches.
And I kind of think it's kind of good too if you are a coach to see how quickly it can switch, you know, for you.
Yeah.
Like if you talk to Shaka Smart in 2012 and you're like, how's that career going? He's like, pretty good.
Yeah.
Everyone's saying I should take over North Carolina or Texas.
It's
or some
me
big
and Brad
program.
Stevens as the 2 hottest coaches on the planet.
And now people are like, should Texas upgrade? Are we sure we want
the
to Shaka?
Celtics are calling for Brad Stevens. The Lakers are calling for Shaka. It's like, man, these 2 guys are the greatest.
Even Tom Izzo. I mean, when there were problems in Cleveland the first year, everyone's like, we got to get Blatt out of here. They should call Izzo. You know, LeBron loves Izzo.
Yeah, I don't mean to disparage Boeheim. I don't want people to take it that way as when I say that Syracuse wins ugly and all that. It's just it's funny how I don't know the everyone praises that. I think I just want more praise for Virginia. It just all comes back to Virginia for me. But like you said, I Syracuse, these games are boring as hell. They're ugly as hell. It's by design. I don't necessarily like it. I think whenever I defend Syracuse or Virginia or any style of basketball, I do so because I enjoy the college game having all these varying different styles. I don't necessarily love watching Syracuse play 2-3 zone. I love that the option exists for Syracuse to play a 2-3 zone. I love that Virginia can do that and be successful. I love that North Carolina can run up and down and get in transition. I love that all these styles exist in college basketball. So I love praising all of them. I just think it's curious to me how, you know, Boeheim has arrived at this point where he just tries to make games ugly as shit and play great defense and win. And it's like, there it is, Jim. Whereas everyone's like, but Tony, when you try to do that, it'll never work.
That is strange, but it also is one of those things too where Jim Boeheim is in the perfect position in this tournament to defend defense, because Cincinnati is probably the second best team in the country defensively, we thought, going into the tournament, besides Virginia, which obviously didn't show up. So Cincinnati only has 2 turnovers against Nevada.
Yeah.
So they don't show up.
Right.
It makes defense look bad.
Right.
Defense is getting a bad rap in this tournament, basically, was what I'm saying. And Jim Boeheim, 73 years old, is still helping defense. He's going to Omaha, Nebraska for the good of defensive basketball.
I love that.
Good for you, Jim.
I love that Omaha, Nebraska is going to play host to the matchup between the 2 7-year-old coaches here. There's something poetic about that. No disrespect to Omaha, but it just feels like a nice place for the old people to.
Feels like a lot of Cracker Jacks are in the building.
Yeah.
You know, it's gonna be a lot of baseball references.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. All right, Tate. One of my favorite things to do heading into the Sweet 16 every year is to sort of forecast what. Play a little hypothetical game. I think when you reach this point, when you reach the Sweet 16, you start buying into the idea of maybe being able to win a national championship. Mm-hmm. We all know that's probably not likely, that Loyola is probably still not winning a national championship, even as much as people want to talk themselves into the idea of it. But yeah, that's part of the fun of the Sweet 16. You're like, oh crap, there's only 16 of us. Why not us? It could be us. Mm-hmm. So what I like to do when we have this downtime leading into it is play the what-if game. What if Syracuse goes on this run and wins it all? What if Duke, you know, God forbid, might win a national championship? It's happening. I'm sorry, Tate. So let's start there. Let's start with Syracuse-Duke and the legacies. I think Duke, the legacy for like Coach K, if he goes to the Final Four, wins the national championship, I'm not sure it really changes much. And I don't say that because I'm hating on Duke. I say it because the man is already the greatest coach who's ever coached college basketball. There's really nothing. There's just more icing on the cake for him. I guess you could say it validates the one and done thing even further. This would be his second title using one and done guys. But is there really anything else to add to that? I mean, Coach K at this point, it's just adding a drop of water into the ocean at this point, right?
Well, he's trying to make the race to catch Carolina. The whole point of this national championship run for Coach K is he is the one, for Duke. He is the chosen son. It's like the Omen, I mean, this is the man that they've put in charge to make this run. He is like, there's Vic Bubis, who nobody knows who that is, and then there's
what's his last name?
Bubis. Bubis. Can you say it in a sentence? Bubis. Yes. That's what Coach K is up against. I mean, he has to fight for this fight. And this is, I think, the greatest thing about this game. And I love seeing any game where Coach K is the young guy. So I like that he's going to be 71 years old in this game. He's going to feel a little spry. That back's going to be a little loose.
Yeah.
And what does he know? Jim Boeheim.
Yes.
Who does he know better than anyone? Jim Boeheim. This is like sort of what Coach K has done to Jim Boeheim is very similar to what Michael Jordan did to Charles Barkley. He saw someone that he was intimidated by and scared of and didn't quite understand, and he was worried. And he said, let me bring this guy in with me. Let me befriend this person so I know who they are. So if we were to, get head-to-head in maybe the Sweet 16 in Omaha, Nebraska, I know what to do. Because guess what? I run his zone now.
Right.
This is my zone.
This is
and Jim Boeheim's team, granted, they go against their own zone every day in practice. They haven't gone against the zone with Wendell Carter and Marvin Bagley and these guys on the back line for Duke. And if Grayson's actually trying on defense and not shooting every time, this Duke team is built to win. They scored 60 on Syracuse last time. Syracuse's held team, it's 56, 52, 53 in the tournament. Yeah. Duke ain't scoring 52, 56, 53. No. I mean, they're scoring more than 60.
And Duke shot 2 for 18 from the three-point line in the one matchup that they had this year. And they still beat Syracuse by 16. Duke's zone is not as good as Syracuse's zone.
No.
We should say that, make that clear. Duke's offense might be infinity times better than Syracuse's offense. That becomes the difference. It is funny. As you said with Coach K taking Boeheim's zone, the image that immediately came to mind was Bill Self wearing the pullover with Bob at the Bob Huggins game, where it's like, I'm going to take a piece of you, and then I'm going to kick your ass with that piece of me, with the piece of you that I now have.
Like, we're friends. It's like
it's psychological warfare of but we're still friends, but good job out there, buddy.
Love playing golf with that guy. He's a good guy.
So Boeheim, let's say Boeheim makes a Final Four. He comes out of this Sweet 16, beats Duke, makes it. He's going to have to do it. Every game that Syracuse plays from here on out is going to have to be the same way. Basically all of their wins this year have been, where it's just they score 48.
And we should say, like, even if Syracuse plays bad, they were out-rebounded 51-30 in this game that they just won against Michigan State. They made 1-3 in the game against Michigan State.
Yeah.
And they somehow won the game. So I say that they have a shot just because they can win in the ugliest way possible. And if Duke gets caught up in the game where we saw what Virginia did, we saw what Carolina did, where they get behind and they start trying to chase the game,
it just becomes
there may be a problem.
It becomes like the zone, and the same thing happens with Virginia's defense throughout the year to other teams. Certainly not to UMBC, but to other teams when they play Virginia. The zone just like wears on you so much that you can't like focus on anything else. Like when you're trying to score and the game becomes so ugly, it just drags everything down. And then when you're playing defense against Syracuse, you're just like,
what do you always hear? Don't think, just play.
Yeah.
And when you're playing against the zone, you have to think and play. It's all happening at the same time.
It reminds me of when I played high school football. The last game I ever played in was like 20 degrees and raining in the state tournament, and I was the starting quarterback. Not to brag. And I'm a senior. And I should be if there's anyone on the field that should care about this and trying to win it, it should be me. And it's like 20 degrees and raining, and I'm looking around just like, what are we doing? Why do I have to do this? That's how I feel like people that play against Syracuse are, just like sitting on the bench, just like, just looking at the clock. Can it be over, please?
They're suffocating.
They're just like, get this game. This is the worst. I don't even care if we're winning, losing. I just get it over with. So let's say Syracuse does that. They do that to Duke. They do it again to Clemson or Kansas. They make a Final Four. Does that change things for Boeheim for you? This would be his third Final Four. He went in 2013. It would be more than his third. I think it would be his sixth, but his third since like 2013, 2016, 2018. So it would be like this new era of Boeheim. Does it really matter? Does it change things? Is are people going to believe in Boeheim, or is it?
I think he got killed by the cloud, a few years ago, and now he's on the other side of that, where people are back to being like Jim Boeheim. What a treat! What a great asset to college basketball. We don't want to waste it while we have it, because like Calhoun left too soon. We didn't get to embrace it. Gary Williams left too soon. We didn't
Old
get to
Big
embrace
East guys.
it. Yeah, so in Maryland. So basically, Jim Boeheim is like right there, and we're trying to make sure that we embrace him before he goes. I think the best thing if he does do the Final Four run is that he goes out with a bang. He definitely retires. Mm-hmm. I think this is actually it. I think if he makes the Final Four run and beats K, he's kind of like, this is my final run. I can't wait for my 30 for 30. Jim Boeheim's last big bang.
Let me understand what you just said. You think Jim Boeheim is going to retire
if he wins the Final Four? If he goes to the Final Four, yeah.
You think the word?
If he continues to win and goes to the Final Four, he will retire.
Interesting.
Yes.
But he's got Buddy coming in next year.
I just feel like Jim. It's been awesome. He knows it's been awesome. We've had fun.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think people have come around on Boeheim.
I want him to go out on a high. I don't want him to go out on a low.
Yeah, I don't think it really. I think it's just sort of a cherry on top for him at this point to go to another Final Four.
Absolutely.
Winning another title would help. Obviously,
it's also bragging rights with your friend. To build a rib K and be like, remember in 2018.
Winning another title always helps, but it would certainly, because as you said, it's just the mellow thing. Even though he's. But Boeheim's a legend, and people.
I'll tell you this: if he wins a title with this team, I'm gonna say he's a better coach than Coach K. I'm gonna say that.
So what about the other Midwest? Because as I look at the bracket, as I'm thinking of the coaches, the programs, the whatever that could, with I wouldn't say the most at stake, but like the biggest opportunity to really, change the way people view them.
Mark Few.
Mark Few? Is that what you're gonna say?
Is that what you were? I thought that's what you were.
No, I was looking still at the Midwest. I was gonna say Kansas. I think Bill Self. Bill Self has been to 2 Final Fours. That's probably shocking to people that don't pay a ton of attention to college basketball. Has the reputation of choking in the Elite Eight. He's won 1 national title. Mm-hmm. We know that he's won 14 straight Big 12 titles. We know that he wins seemingly 30 games every single year. He gets 1 seeds every single year.
I think he averages 29.6 wins a season.
Yeah,
that's ridiculous.
It's absolutely incredible.
That makes no sense.
And I think if Kansas wins a national title, that is massive for Bill Self. It's massive for Kansas, obviously. Not that it's not massive for all these other schools, but I think Bill Self goes from just like there's an argument that exists that the only reason Kansas gets the 1 seed is because they dominate the Big 12. The only reason they dominate the Big 12 is because they have Allen Fieldhouse. And they're one of the few programs in the Big 12 that actually care about basketball more than football. Mm-hmm. So
they are basketball.
Yeah, and when you factor all that in, you could sort of, if you wanted to make an argument that like that's why Bill Self is good, and can he actually? I'm just trying to pretend this is what idiots would say, but so getting another title to me, like there's a ton for Bill Self here to do, and if you look at like who he would beat, he's going to beat probably Duke in the Elite Eight, then probably Villanova, then say Kentucky. That's a great rundown.
Yeah.
For Bill Self to be like, suck on this. It wasn't just Derrick Rose missing a free throw. Was it Rose that missed the free throw?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was.
Derrick Rose missing a free throw and Chalmers hitting a shot that won me the
Mario's
title.
miracle.
It wasn't just that. It was that I'm a damn good coach. I've just choked in every single Elite Eight I've been in since.
And plus, the biggest thing on Self is everyone does the whole, he's had 8 number 1 seeds and 2 Final Fours, And everyone remembers Bucknell because he just got there. And I think that somehow has clouded everything with them. Yeah, I think Self has a lot of
Clemson. So like the up and comers. I mean, it's obviously awesome. I don't think Legacies even exist for Brad Brownell yet or Clemson. You can do that with any team. Like Final Fours are cool for any program. They're whatever, but I mean,
let's be honest. Brownell before the season, he said, "I knew I needed to win this year."
Yeah,
and he needed to win in 2 areas. People at Clemson were like, look at our football program.
Right.
We win titles at Clemson. So that's what they wanted him to do there. And the 2 things he was going to do this year, 1, get Zion Williamson. Didn't work out, so they didn't get him. The number 2 thing was actually make a run in the tournament. Don't get the 5-12 upset that we were scared about. We thought that he was going to have Zach Lofton hurt him in the first round, get out of the tournament early, and Brownell would have probably been out. At least that's what he's saying now. Yeah. Now that he's made the Sweet 16, he feels a little bit more comfortable. If they really make a run, if they really beat Kansas, then Brownell is, one of the hot young coaches that everyone's talking about. The guy from UNCW, he's not the same guy.
But that's what I mean. If Clemson goes on this run, it's not to discredit Brownell or say that he's not good. It's just when it's sort of your first time there and your first time going through it, you don't have a legacy yet. You just have like that.
Unless
you're
Shaka Smart, and then your legacy is it's just growing. It's just constantly.
But you don't really have a legacy. You just like kind of have one chapter, and that's just the one chapter that we have. So like Clemson.
Did you just write Shaka Smart's book?
Yeah, there
one
you go.
chapter.
One chapter.
Sorry, Shaka. That was mean. That was mean, Shaka.
That would be awesome. The Shaka Smart's book is just titled One Chapter. There's literally one chapter, and it's like the time I went to the Final Four in 2011.
That one Final Four.
And it's 400 pages long. That's good, Tate. I like that.
We should do that. We'll write that.
Yeah, Clemson is playing well, though. They kicked Auburn's ass. They are. They got a good thing going, playing great defense. But yeah, as far as legacy, we don't really need to touch on that.
I think it also makes, if Brownell wins with Clemson, I know people don't know much about Clemson, but Grantham went down in January, who's one of their best players. And when they lost Grantham, everyone was like, it was like Bonzi Colson with Notre Dame. Everyone's like, Clemson, they're out. They don't have their full team. They're not able to do it. But they win with guard play. And Gabe DeVoe's the man.
Same sort of thing with Texas Tech as it is with Clemson. Not to say Texas Tech isn't going to do anything. I think Texas Tech is in a good position. I mean,
they're happy to be here a bunch.
Texas Tech makes as much sense to me coming out of the East as any of the others. Honestly, I could see it happening. I could also see it not happening. That's how I see it.
It's a good stance.
That's how I see it. But yeah, same sort of thing. It's like Texas Tech has never even made an Elite Eight in the history of the program. So this would be awesome. It would be great. But it's not like Chris Beard does not have a legacy yet. Texas Tech does not really have a legacy. So it's just sort of a.
Do you know whose legacy this really hurts?
What?
Pat Knight's.
Yeah,
and the Knight family at large, because Bob Knight was going to go down to Texas Tech.
This is make a run. Texas Tech, Purdue. This is sort of like a Indiana.
Yeah. This is like
a rivalry game.
Where's Bob Knight at?
Yeah,
he should be at
this game. Yeah,
come on.
We gotta get Bob Knight there. So
he's probably going to pull for Purdue at this point.
But if we're staying in the East, Purdue is another one. I think Bill Self. There's a huge opportunity for him to sort of change how everyone views him. I think Matt Painter might be the single coach in this tournament that's left that could just completely change how everyone talks about him. Matt Painter, I feel like Matt Painter outside of Purdue circles is not well respected. And
well, there's a lot of people that don't know Matt Painter is the coach at Purdue.
Yes,
unfortunately.
Just start right there.
People just know Purdue basketball. They're like, oh yeah, Purdue.
Oh, yeah, that's the one program. Yeah,
they don't know Matt Painter.
Purdue has not been to Elite Eight since 2000. They've not been to a Final Four since 1980.
They're tortured.
They're tortured. They've had great players. They've had great teams. Robbie Hummel tears his ACL twice in the prime of his career. Isaac Haas.
Kyle Singler's Adam Morrison, Robbie Hummel. That's the best way to describe Robbie Hummel. If you don't understand Robbie Hummel from any context.
Swanigan last year, they lose to Kansas. Haas this year, they have a good team this year, and then Haas goes down. Like something always seems to happen. Matt Painter wins the Big Ten a lot. He's been a great coach in the Big Ten, but he's never made an Elite Eight. He's made a handful of Sweet 16. So that's, as we know, that's all that matters to people. What you do in March. If Purdue makes a Final Four, I think this is not an instance of just a one-time thing for Matt Painter. Like Matt Painter's a coach that's been knocking on the door. It's just Sean Miller and Tony Bennett and a handful, Chris Mack. Like these guys are ahead of him in line on knocking on this door in the way that people talk about these guys. But Matt Painter's in that group. So I think if we're talking about legacy,
Scott Drew.
Yeah, Scott Drew.
Just for Scott. Had to throw that in there.
So that's one that stands out to me too. I think Bill Self and Matt Painter are like two big ones.
It'd be good for you too, because you're a big fan of the Mackey Arena and the bathrooms, of course. So if they win a title, you predicted this year was going to be a year for them. That's what I was going to say. For the Big Ten, I know just going back to Michigan State, we thought it was Michigan State. We thought it was their year. I'm still convinced that it could be Purdue's year. We said it a few times this year. There's been some moments.
As a quick aside, how about a new mystery? The Isaac Haas mystery. We had the Chris Mack mystery that we started on the last podcast. Is Chris Mack going to Louisville? We don't really know. We saw his wife at the Louisville shopping mall looking for houses also while she was at the mall, while also
Why was there a realtor store in the mall?
So is he going to Louisville?
Folks.
We don't know.
Yes,
People forget his wife is from Louisville, and but we have a new mystery. It's the Isaac Haas mystery of he fractures his elbow. He's done for the year. How could you possibly play with a fractured elbow? And then Isaac Haas says, I'll show you how I'm going to play. I'm going to get this special pad that I'm going to put on. We're going to make it happen. So here's the new development in the Isaac Haas mystery, Tate. The reporters are shoving cameras and tape recorders and microphones in Matt Painter's face. They keep asking him about this. They're saying, is Isaac Haas coming back? Because Isaac Haas will not quit. He will not die. He's still practicing with the team. He's still running up and down. They showed him warming up against Butler. He's shooting hook shots and then wincing in pain and looks like he wants to, he's shooting himself with morphine probably as soon as the camera stops rolling because he just looks like his arm's going to fall off. Matt Painter basically says Haas is definitely not playing.
Yes.
She's like, it's definitely not happening. But then someone asked him, are the engineers, Purdue's an engineer school. It's.
Do they have a bionic arm, sir?
Are they working on something? And he's like, yeah, I think they are. So we're not really sure what's going on here. Matt Painter is I'm going to say it, he's handling this very, very poorly.
Yeah, you had a great point about this.
He is not doing what a coach should do in this situation, which is you're going into the Sweet 16. You're playing Texas Tech. Mm-hmm. Texas Tech has their turf toe problem with Keenan Evans, who I think is at this point is kind of over it. He's playing really, really well.
Yeah, I think that was good.
I think
see, and this is a great example of using something where Keenan Evans has turf toe. He's not feeling great. He's not 100%. Teams are like, maybe this guy's not 100%.
Right.
Then he turns it on and it's playing great.
Look what, like what we did with the Michael Porter mystery. Is he 60? Although that one kind of backfired.
Is he 65%? Yeah.
Didn't actually help.
Turns out he was 65%.
You got to finesse this situation if you're Matt Painter and say, like, listen, Isaac, he doesn't look great, but he's a determined young man. It's going to be a game time thing. We'll see. Instead, Matt Painter's like, no, he's not playing. Are you guys out of your mind? The guy fractured his elbow, and anybody with a brain should know this. We should know that if you fracture your elbow and it's a shooting elbow, so all you have to do is foul him, and he would go to the free throw line and airball every single free throw. But when you start hearing things like Isaac Haas wants to play, you talk yourself into it. Maybe it'll happen. Maybe it'll happen. And then Matt Painter comes along and is like, no, it's not happening. And you need to plant the seed of doubt in people's minds.
But you're making it easy on all the managers and assistant coaches that are putting the tape together on the game. So if you say definitively Isaac Haas is not going to play, all right, great. Let's scout every single game that Isaac Haas is not on the floor. So let's go watch every single minute with Harms on the floor. That's what we're going to scout for.
So my theory is that Painter knows that Purdue is better without Haas, as everyone else.
So he's not even willing to take.
So he's like, no. He's like, please. He's like, stop. Media, stop talking about it, or you're gonna make me have to play Haas, and I don't want to play Haas.
What if it's one of those things where Haas just sincerely wants to play? And it's like, I'll do it, coach.
Yeah.
And he's like,
Isaac,
you have a broken elbow. Get back to the bench.
What if they X-rayed it and it wasn't actually broken? He's like, Isaac, I got terrible news. We got to amputate it. He's like, what? I barely hit it on the ground. What are you talking about, coach?
Like, yeah, you can't play.
Oh, so that's the mystery, is Isaac Haas, will he or won't he? Matt Painter says 100% definitely not happening, but Isaac Haas keeps saying he might.
What happens if Isaac Haas checks himself in? What if he just runs, takes it off, puts himself in? That'd be great.
So moving on with the legacy talk, though, I think Purdue is one that stands out to me. Do any of them stand out to you? His Kansas and Purdue. Just
Mark Few stands out to me, and I brought that up earlier.
Yeah, you did bring it up earlier. Let's talk about him.
Gonzaga, I look at this team, and I've sort of bought into the idea of maybe Gonzaga can make a run. I like what they're doing. I like Norvell. I like Hachimura. I like that those two guys. It's like when you think about that team, in my head, I think about the team from last year. So you automatically go to Perkins and Williams, and you're like, okay, that's the Gonzaga that you know. But you see these two guys, and they're playing at a different level. They seem like they're prepared. Hachimura reminds me of Zach Collins last year, where you're kind of like, this guy is way too prepared and ready to be playing right now. Why is he not playing more? And now he's kind of getting the reps and getting the minutes, and Few's trusting him. I just think as far as Mark Few gets to his first Final Four last year, it's one thing to get your first Final Four and be done. Ask Shaka Smart about that. The second thing you could do, just kidding, this is just shouts at Shaka Smart.
You're just dragging Shaka today.
if he does it back-to-back, that's a different conversation. Now we're like, oh, this guy's for real. Because look at Billy Donovan. The fact that he took to Florida, and obviously he won the national championship, won 2 back-to-back. But just
did he win 2?
He won 2.
I don't remember the second one.
Yeah, I don't remember the second one either.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
That
was me.
The second one didn't happen.
See, I don't want to bring that up either. But anyways, if you go to back-to-back Final Fours, you're on a different level of coaching. People respect you. You're always going to be remembered for doing that. And now Gonzaga has become almost a blue blood. We talked about that. Like, they're close. They're right on the verge where people – it's almost – if Stevens had stayed at Butler, I think he was 12 years from being where Mark Few is, where it's like – this team is now like in Duke territory almost, where they're legit every single year, and they have real recruits that are coming in, and they can win a title every year.
And when Tate says they're almost a blue blood, to clarify for people listening that are going to take offense to that, you mean the way that we react to their how
if
they
Gonzaga
win or lose.
loses, we're shocked.
Yeah, if they lose,
that's where they want to be.
If Gonzaga loses in the first round, we're like, what? How did that happen?
We're doing whole segments like the Zags go down.
Yeah, what's wrong with Gonzaga?
It's not like Xavier is a perfect example. Xavier is a 1 seed. They win the Big East regular season. They lose, and people are like, that Florida State team, they're fun.
Yeah,
they just look like they could win that game.
Yeah, you're right. So Mark Few, they they got the big breakthrough last year, made their first Final Four. I'm with you though. Like he goes to another one, and they go back-to-back Final Fours. That's something
with a different team. It's like a coaching job,
completely different team
without Zach Collins.
Yeah, without Williams-Goss, without Karnowski. Like those are
Nigel Williams-Goss. I mean, when you look at the point guards at Gonzaga, and I mean, I may be talking out of turn here, but it's going to be Stockton that people talk about, and probably Williams-Goss as far as familiarity and people remember. I mean, maybe
Dick Al.
Oh, that's right, Dick out. Dick out.
No, I said Dick out.
No,
there's no T on the end of that.
Yeah, what? Dick out.
There's no T.
Is that right, Dan?
There's
Dick
no
out.
T on the end of his last name.
Dan Dick out.
No.
You can join James
Mark
Dean with that
a good
name.
pick. What about Huggy Bear? Can we talk about Huggy Bear's legacy? Do you think he needs this?
Yes.
Do you think Huggy Bear really needs anything in life, or is he just content at this point? I think he does need this. I think Bob Huggins has been to 2 Final Fours, which feels like not enough. But then again, you remember Bill Self's only been to 2, and there are actually a lot of really good coaches that have only ever been to 2 Final Fours. But Bob Huggins is one of them. One was in 1992 with Cincinnati. The other was in 2010 with West Virginia. He sort of creates his own adversity in the sense that he purposely recruits shitty players so then he can be, everyone can paint that picture like.
The Javon Carter recruiting story has been coming up a lot lately.
Yeah.
And for people that don't know about this, so basically Bob Huggins went to this gym to watch Javon Carter. This is when he was in high school. And the kid was in there an hour and 30 minutes before practice started. And then they play the game or run a scrimmage or something like this, and he presses the entire time, unprompted. And Bob Huggins is like, "This is my guy," and everyone's like, "No, I don't even think he was supposed to be watching Javon Carter." And he's like, "That's my guy," and that's how Bob Huggins works. He finds personalities, and it's like, "That's what I want. I want that bulldog. I want him in my press system. That's who I want." And yeah, that's what Bob Huggins is about, and he's going to overachieve with this team, I think.
Yeah, if Bob Huggins, so if he beats Villanova, who I think at this point most people would agree is the best team left in the tournament, and if not Villanova, probably Duke. It would probably be the other pick, but Villanova is probably if he can knock off Villanova, then beat Texas Tech or Purdue, which he's probably actually not getting much credit for beating Texas Tech or Purdue. No one would probably care that much. But then say if he gets to a national championship with this West Virginia team, that would be massive. He's not in the Hall of Fame. He has 800-something wins. He's an absolute legend, but at the same time, he's only been to 2 Final Fours, never won a title.
He had some controversy stuff that kind of clouded people from giving him the credit for a little while.
Yeah.
Like right in the middle of his run before he went to West Virginia and got it back. Before 2010. Like 2010 was like his redemption tour of like Bob Huggins. He's a staple in college basketball.
He sort of had like some ups and downs with West Virginia fans where like I feel like he's a West Virginia guy and all that kind of stuff, but I feel like he raised the bar of the program, but then it became obvious that they sort of plateaued, and people got a little frustrated that we blow every single lead we ever get against Kansas.
Well, they probably watched the end of game sequence last year with Javon Carter, and they were like, "What are we gonna do?"
So there's all that kind of stuff, but it's interesting how we brought up Villanova and how we were, when the draw came out, we said Villanova has a really easy draw. That was kind of the consensus, was that 1 through 4 in the East is easier than 1 through 4 anywhere else to most people. For Villanova, we were scared about that second round game no matter who it was going to be. They blow out Alabama in the second round. Now, basically, the East has gone chalk. Villanova now has West Virginia instead of what was supposed to be Wichita State, but that was a toss-up anyway. And then you got the 1-5-3-2. Villanova does not have an easy draw anymore. In West Virginia, I'm talking myself into like West Virginia actually having a good chance against Villanova. Like they're going to play the exact same style of basketball, more or less. Like what Villanova doesn't press, they don't play the hectic style. But West Virginia shoots a ton of threes. They'll like to get up and down. There will be that part of it that I guess like Villanova probably has better shooters than West Virginia, so that could be a problem. But this West Virginia team is just I believe in them a little more, and if they can knock off Villanova, that'd be something.
That would really be something, especially because Villanova, they have 38 assists on 56 field goals in this tournament.
That's incredible.
I mean, they're passing the ball.
I take back everything I said. Yeah. West Virginia's not beat Villanova.
I mean, it's been something else to see every single person on that team be a threat on offense.
Yeah.
I mean, you almost forget that they have Brunson sometimes, how much the ball moves around when Spellman's taking threes and stuff. That's what worries me if you're a West Virginia fan. But like I said, this is one of those things, if West Virginia gets up, they get a big lead, and they start pressing, not West Virginia. Villanova starts pressing. It starts taking bad shots like we've seen with – I think that's the theme of this tournament is teams trying to rely on the three-point line to get back in games. And this is like panicking almost.
That's the hope if you're a West Virginia fan going into this game is that there might be 43 shot by each team in this game.
But that's what you want.
And the bad news is Villanova is a better 3-point shooting team, and the odds favor them. But the good news is
the odds have been wrong a lot this time.
The odds have been wrong a lot. When you shoot threes, anything can happen. So that would certainly be interesting. I mean, if Huggy Bear gets back to the Final Four, that would be awesome. He's got a ton that he could at stake here.
This is a big game if you're Konate. If you want to take around the dribble drive, where basically Brunson and Bridges and those guys don't want to get in there and get in the mix because they don't want to get swatted around. That's what happened to Carolina. They didn't want to drive. They didn't want Robert Williams swatting the ball. They wanted to kick the ball out and shoot threes. Yeah. That's what West Virginia can do. Konate, the volleyball block.
I'll mention Kentucky.
That was an obligation. We have to mention Kentucky.
We mentioned Kentucky.
Yes. Calipari.
I think Calipari.
What a coaching job, right?
So
this is my favorite time of year when Calipari makes a run. What a coaching job, folks.
I think he's screwed in terms of his. There's not a ton to be gained other than a national championship, because if Kentucky, even if they make the national championship game at this point, every single person's going to be screaming, one, you had the easiest path in NCAA tournament history to get there.
After complaining about it, which is iconic.
And two, you have your team is absolutely loaded. The fact that this is a surprise to anybody is not. You should not get credit for that. It should be a detraction to what you did in the regular season. Those are the two things everyone's going to say. So I'm not really sure there's much to gain for Calipari except for winning the national championship.
There should be an obligation that if they do make the run to the Final Four, we should all remember that. And that was the year that they were a 5 seed.
Yeah, right.
And that was the year that Virginia lost, and and Arizona lost.
Yeah,
Cincinnati lost.
But Tate's going to be huge asterisk next year for Kentucky.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
And then the other one, Kansas State. I'm gonna end up going through all these teams even though I didn't want to. Kansas State, Bruce Weber redemption tour. That'd be nice, right? They'd go to the Final Four. Bruce Weber goes to the Final Four. You take back every bad thing you've ever said about him.
I even tweeted it out after they won the game. The picture I remember from Illinois, they're like, "We got to get a real coach. Let's hire a real coach." And it's just Bruce Weber's mug with an orange tie, being like, "Can someone please make a play?"
Last one I want to mention by no, it's not. Damn it, I did it again. I want to mention John.
It's a great tease, folks.
John Beilein.
The man of March.
John Beilein, Michigan goes back to the Final Four. That would be good for John Beilein. I think he's been to what, 1? That's it, 2013, right? Yeah, you got to get to 2. One is a fluke. 1, anybody can go to 1 is what people say. Can you do it again?
Yeah.
Tate has been dragging Shaka all this podcast for only going to 1. So Beilein goes to 2. He established if Beilein really goes to 2, he really will. If he goes to the Final Four, he will really solidify himself as Mr. March over Tom Izzo. I'm not ready to give him the thing yet because, I mean, you can't erase like all the things Izzo has done. But if he goes to 2, I think the torch has officially been passed, Tate.
I just want to say this, and for that Michigan team, Jordan Poole hits that shot. They all freak out. They're tweeting all this stuff about Jordan Poole. They get his name wrong. They tweeted Jordan Peele. This was a story on Outside the Lines I saw, which is hilarious. I just think that's great. That's how good Michigan is this year. That a guy that hit their game-winning shot, that was in the game at that moment, a freshman, Jordan Poole, hits a shot. Don't even know. They're just like, I don't care. Just keep making shots. Yeah. It's like as if Beilein is playing. It's just like everyone just sees Beilein.
When Duncan Robinson does something well, they tweet at the Spurs. And they're like, hey, Tim Duncan, David Robinson was really good out there.
It's a nice combo. These guys are great.
Obviously Final Fours would help all these coaches. This really is the final one I'm going to say. Leonard Hamilton.
Yes.
At Florida State, the odds are stacked against him. Florida State, I think, if you don't know anything about Florida State, but you know about sort of Florida State teams of the past, you might assume that this team plays great defense. They do not. They play fast. This is not like a typical Florida State team, and I say that to say I don't really trust them moving forward. I think they were very, very lucky to have beaten Xavier. I think they got some favorable calls. I think I'm not saying I'm trying to choose my words carefully because people are going to take that the wrong way. I'm
going to use Leonard Hamilton's words for you.
Okay, do that.
He said, I think what you see happening in college basketball right now, it's almost like a revolution. And they were asking him about the upsets in the games.
Yeah.
And he's basically, it's anyone's tournament right now. The best teams, like we said, on paper, have not advanced, and that's fine. And that's what Florida State did to Xavier.
Yeah.
Xavier had the better resume on paper. They had the better team on paper, but Florida State showed up and won the game.
Florida State is a team, as I brought up earlier, that you get to the Sweet 16, you start talking yourself into, can they do it?
Yeah.
The answer is probably still very much no. anything can happen.
But this is the strangest tournament. I mean,
yeah.
in a long time.
I say that to say, though, that if Florida State does go to the Final Four, the reason I'm bringing up this part is that Leonard Hamilton, with Tubby Smith being fired, with Kevin Ollie being fired, we have Shaka Smart, we have Mike Davis as the only 2 black coaches, currently active coaches with
Final Fours.
Which is it's crazy. So yeah, that is something that would be awesome. Having I don't know. There aren't enough black coaches in college basketball in general. It's something I talk with Greg Oden about, who pretends like he wants to get into coaching. I've told him you don't actually want to get into coaching. You just don't know what else you want to do with your life. But he and I talk about this all the time, just kind of the opportunities that black coaches get and how they're probably not enough, and how there doesn't really seem, as of right now, there aren't really black coaches that are above reproach in college basketball. There is no one that's like on the level
on the rise.
Yeah, there's
like
no
what
one
Shaka
that's like,
was. There was so much excitement about.
There's like no one who, if they got fired, people wouldn't be shocked or like would be shocked. I mean, like what, you fired that guy? I guess that's not entirely true, but Leonard Hamilton's like kind of that, and yeah, it'd be cool to have just more Final Fours. And
he's done such a great job at Florida State. I mean, when they won the regular season, the ACC regular season, people were freaking out about Leonard, all he did down there, and you see guys like Steve Robinson, who was at Florida State on staff at North Carolina. You see Paul Hewitt, a guy that took Georgia Tech to the national title game.
Right.
He's going to be on staff with Penny Hardaway. That's a good thing. Penny Hardaway getting hired at Memphis. That's a good thing. Pat Ewing, as much as I laughed and joked about him going back to Georgetown, that's such a huge opportunity for Pat Ewing to be able to run that program.
With JT3 getting fired, he was one of the black coaches that had a Final Four as well, because he went in 07. Yeah, so that would be cool. That would be cool if Leonard Hamilton made it to the Final Four. So,
and Leonard's putting his dues. He's the man.
Yeah, he's the guy. Like, how old is Leonard Hamilton, if you had to guess?
I'm gonna say 36.
Yeah, you can convince me.
The man looks great.
He's gonna be like 43 next year.
Yeah,
he's probably awesome. like 76, and no one noticed. Like he's actually probably the oldest coach in college basketball. No one actually noticed because he looks like he's.
And we talked about Gonzaga and Mark Few. I mean, the talent that Florida State lost off last year's team. When you look at Isaac and you look at Bacon and Rattan Mays, I mean, that team was unbelievable, and a team that I said famously was the best team in the country about December last year of 2016. And now you look at what they've done with Terrence Mann being the face of their program. Kumaji's playing up to a level. PJ
Terrence
Savoy.
Mann he's the face of the program. He hasn't even played well in this tournament.
Exactly. All right, let's. This has been. I don't know. I just think you look at all these coaches and all the legacies on the line. I was really downtrodden on this tournament. I know I was really negative after the games, and I say a little bit of that came. I'm sorry what I did to Sister Jean. I called her out. That was rude of me.
Are you sorry?
I'm not really, but I feel bad. I feel like I let my own, me being upset for my team going down. I just let it slip and I let it go. And Sister Jean, I let it go in the tournament too.
Do you think Sister Jean will write an article for the Players Tribune if Loyola makes the Final Four?
You know what I really wanted to do is to do the Chris Holtman thing, like what he did to me. All those so-called journalists. Sister Jean just calls them out. These so-called podcasters out there coming at me. She's like, I'm living to 150, bitches, and drops the mic. That would be good. I deserve that. I hope Sister Jean does that. I will say this. My biggest gripe with Sister Jean, and this is, just a little aside.
Oh, my God. Here we go. I'm excited for this.
She has God's ear. She that's what they're telling me. That's why the shot went in. That's what I was told. Yep. Chris Christopherson made that shot. I'm kidding. That's not his name, but that's how I remember him. Makes the shot. It goes in. And he's like, thank you, Sister Jean, for making that happen. So, Sister Jean, I ask you, if you have his ear and you can dictate what happens in this tournament, number one, why are the Devils still alive?
Ooh, that's a great point.
Why are you sidetracking God from getting rid of the Devil right now? Coach K is alive. He is thriving. His team looks better than ever. Sister Jean, stop talking to him. He has more pressing matters.
Interesting.
That's the last thing I'll say about Sister Jean.
I thought you were going to say, if Sister Jean has God's ear, why is she not getting the Chicago recruits to go to Loyola? Because that's
why did Anthony Davis not go to Loyola?
Why was Jabari
Tell me that, Sister Jean.
Why is Jabari Parker not playing for the Ramblers?
Why is Jabari Parker not a senior?
That's the secret. Honestly, I think if Loyola goes to the Final Four this year, that's what we're going to see. We're going to see every single one of these 5-stars coming out of Chicago just signing up to play for the Ramblers. Are they the Ramblers?
Yeah, they're the Ramblers. It's so good.
What games? So as we wrap this up, what games? Enough of the legacy, the Sister Jeans, the Eric Musselman's family, the all that kind of stuff. The old coaches coaching against each other with the 2-3 zones. Just the actual basketball being played. What games are you most excited about as we head into the Week 16?
I think the best game and the game that feels right and it feels like it was supposed to happen. It feels like it makes sense to me, and that's what I've been trying to make sense of this whole tournament. Villanova, West Virginia.
That's what I was going to say as well.
It's the best game because it's contrasting styles. It's two really good basketball teams. And when you get to the Sweet 16, and that's what we kept saying about the upsets, when you get to the Sweet 16, you want it to be two teams who are like, oh, my God, someone has to go home.
Yeah.
You know,
I hate this.
Yeah, like this somebody has to lose today, folks. You know, I want to have that feeling, not like, thank God they're out of the tournament, which is, you know, nothing to say about UMBC. But as I was watching the Kansas State game, I was like, it's about time, folks. Like it was fun while it lasted, and I think Villanova, West Virginia is going to feel like it's a, dare I say, an Elite Eight game in the Sweet 16.
It's going to feel like you're gonna be watching and be like, dang, this is a great Elite Eight game.
This feels like March.
Yeah, is this March?
And it is.
Is it here already? I would agree with you. That's the game I'm most looking forward to. Also, just because of the style of play of both teams. Like I said, we brought it up earlier. It would be 43 shot probably by both teams. I might be exaggerating. I might not, though. Ton of 3-shot, up and down. Javon Carter versus Jalen Brunson. That's going to be awesome to watch. I will give a special shout-out to Kentucky, Kansas State. I think Kansas State is better than Kentucky is probably given credit for. I think Kentucky fans might be, as we said on the podcast we did yesterday, counting their chickens before they hatch a little bit. They do have a favorable draw. But Kansas State has made it this far, and by this far I mean they beat an 8 seed and a 16 seed.
Which is pretty impressive.
And got taken sort of to the wire by a 16 seed. But they made it this far without their best player.
Dean
and
Wade.
I think that's been lost in the shuffle because unless you're one of the top teams, no one cares when you lose your best player. But Dean Wade for Kansas State has not played. He might be coming back, or will he? We don't really know. He was supposed to maybe sort of kind of come back in the first round game against Creighton. He has a stress fracture in his foot, I believe, is what he's recovering from. That didn't happen. They decided they were going to save him for the game against Virginia. The game against Virginia did not happen because, as you may have heard, Virginia lost.
So they rested him.
So Bruce Weber's like, if we lose to the 16th seed, so help me God. Like, you know,
I will really be done.
So
There'll be a new headline in Manhattan, Kansas that says, hire a real coach. And it's Bruce Weber again with a purple tie.
So they buy a few more days for Dean Wade to come back. And now we enter the Kentucky game. Yeah, on Sunday, Dean Wade gets a camera shoved in his face, gets asked, are you going to play? I think I'm like 98% sure I'll play against Kentucky. Seems pretty good. You and I have been on this where we notice when guys throw out specific numbers, and what do we mean by that? With Michael Porter saying 65%, with Kyle Guy saying he was 100%, excluding the part where my knee is falling off.
Where I have a huge brace and I'm not 100%.
98% is very specific.
What is the 2% difference?
Yeah, like why couldn't you say 100% is the question, and that's the worry. Is like if you're that high, if you get me to 98% where you're saying like I feel great, why not just take it to 100% and say I'm definitely playing?
And let's be honest, when you say 98% or 99%, there's more percent. You know, you're just trying to ham it up like that's the 0.1% time that would happen. It's like, well, obviously it's happened more than that, right? That you would think about this.
But anyway, on Sunday it feels like he's going to play. We're pretty confident.
I'm just pissed he said 98%.
Yeah, but it's probably going to happen, right? So on Monday he gets asked again. He says, "Will you be playing against Kentucky?" And he says, "I think I will be, but we'll talk about it a little more and see some people. I'm hoping and praying. I'm pretty positive I will be, but if not, I'll be a great cheerleader. I'll be a great cheerleader like usual." Does that feel like more than 98% or less than 98% to you?
That feels like the Billy Preston mystery.
It feels
like Michael Porter Jr. It feels like, what are you talking about, Dean?
I think, you know what this feels like to me is Bruce is trying to assess the situation. He's saying, do we have a realistic shot at winning this game against Kentucky? If we do, Dean, you're playing. If we do not, Dean, you're not, because then you're my ace up my sleeve. When the people say, how do we lose by 40 to Kentucky? I say, well, Dean Wade, wasn't 100%. I think Bruce has a hand in this, and I got to say, I love the move.
Does Dean Wade have a chance to have a D Wade game again, so everyone can make that reference?
Ooh.
I'm excited for that. D Wade.
Also, Jared Vanderbilt. Is he coming back in this game in Kentucky?
Yes, we finally got the Cal update. He says we'll see. It would be nice to have one more guy. It makes us a different team. Obviously, adding a guy. He gives you one more, just in case you didn't understand what his original point was. It may be worth it, but we don't need him to play. But I want to see if he can play.
What a glowing endorsement of Jared Vanderbilt's game, by the way, where Cal's like all the reporters.
He's another guy.
Yeah, Jared Vanderbilt.
Another body.
Cal. Jared Vanderbilt is like 6'10" and can handle the ball and pass and is really, really, really versatile big guy. That's awesome. And
that was
like,
my kid answer. That was not a my guy answer. That was a sure.
Cal's like, yeah, he's just another body I throw out there. I don't really know much about him. Honestly,
it was good that he said guy though. He's one more guy. If he said he's one more kid, then we would have had a real problem with Vanderbilt.
If Kansas State gets Dean Wade back though, that's interesting. That becomes an interesting game. I mean, anytime a team doesn't really have anything to lose, you're going up against Kentucky. I think most people at this point think Kentucky, if we're talking about 98%, I think most people think Kentucky has a 98% chance of making the Final Four. And Kansas State played in the Big 12 all year. Every single game they were playing against good teams. They are not going to be scared of Kentucky. Dean Wade is a matchup nightmare for even some of the guys Kentucky has that they'll put on him with all their length and stuff. If he is 100%, if he gets that extra 2% and gets up to 100%, he could be a problem. So that's a game that I think will be interesting. I mean, I definitely expect Kentucky to win, but I don't know. It should be a fun one. So anything else before we go?
Kansas, Clemson. I'm excited for that game. Clemson, I think it was.
Yeah, that actually will be.
Clemson is the best ACC team left besides Duke. So I mean, Duke's sort of its own entity. So if you want to watch a good team play, I think first Sweet 16 in 21 years. They've only made one Elite Eight in history. So
should we just mention every single game so that way none of the fans can bitch at us because
everyone's
that's like
super happy.
What? I can't believe you did that long and you didn't even talk about Michigan, Texas A&M. I think that's actually going to be a great game, and I think.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Beard's going to be great. We're excited to watch him coach. Keenan Evans, his toe was 100%. Purdue, Matt Harms' hair. We did it. We did it.
Also, Loyola, Nevada. That is Sister Jean versus the Musselman family. There's no other way. If
we're going to lose one meme, folks.
Don't even talk about the stuff happening on the court. It doesn't matter. That's the meme game. We're going to lose one, unfortunately. We'll just have to see what happens, Tate. We'll just have to see what happens. Do you have any shout-outs before we go?
Just one shout out I want to put out there. We're in Los Angeles. It is the regional. Florida State, when they won their game, they sang California, knows how to party. Want to go back out to LA. It was exciting. I wish that, our two teams were going to be here, but I think we're going to be at the regional. We're going to be at practices. We're going to be around the place. We're going to be player hating.
Yeah.
Like you've never seen before.
I think we should go. That should be the plan.
Hate.
I think we should just be haters. We should
it's going to be great.
Just lay the shtick on thick. I'm gonna wear all the Ohio State stuff. Cheer and not just cheer against Michigan. I think that's what everyone expects me to do is just cheer because they're my rivals and stuff. I'm gonna cheer against every single team. I'm gonna cheer against Florida State, certainly Gonzaga because they beat us, Michigan, Texas A&M, all of them.
Although we can be bought because Gonzaga reached out and said they'd give us free gear. So if we have free gear, we may pull for you.
That is true.
We'll figure it out. Look, it's whoever values our loyalty the most.
If you haven't learned anything from listening to Tate and I as we try to backpedal on every pick we made in this bracket, it's that we are willing to straddle the line of whatever the topic, whatever the issue, anything. We will hate all these teams until we actually love them. No matter what it takes, we will do whatever we need to do.
We like to see all sides
like
and see if we can figure it out.
I want to give a shout out to Javon Carter, who is probably the most outstanding player of this tournament so far. He has scored 49 points in the two games that West Virginia has played in. West Virginia has blown out both teams they've played. They've played a 12 and a 13 seed, so we should say that. He scored 49 points. He's averaging 5.5 steals in these two games. He is averaging, I believe, if my math is correct, 6.5 assists and 4.5 rebounds in two games. I don't like doing the average with two games, but
it's
I'm just trying to.
It's right. It's for the tournament.
I'm trying to show people just how hot he's been these past two games.
And Javon
shout
Carter,
out to Javon Carter.
What he had 28 points, and that was on a list with Jerry West for the most points in a tournament game. So anytime you're at West Virginia, you're on a list with Jerry West. You're doing good things.
That's it. Enjoy the Sweet 16. We will be back Friday, I believe. Yep. After the Elite Eight has been set, we will do a reaction pod to that. So check that out. We will have an Elite Eight. Texas Tech looking to make their first Elite Eight they've ever made. I believe Texas A&M is as well. Yes, that's true. Loyola, 1963. They actually won the national title of the year. But Nevada has also never made the Elite Eight. So a lot of new blood here. Should be fun, Tate.
I can't wait.
That's all we got. Save the crew.